Hey everybody, it's Friday morning. That means it is Theotek time. And we're glad to have with us today Brady Shearer of Pro Church Tools. And he's going to talk to us about working with church media. But before we introduce him, we got our regular panel. And we'll start over there on the, by my looking, it's over there muted at the end, Antoine Wright, looking as comfortable and relaxed as ever. How you doing this morning, Antoine?
Doing all right. How you guys doing? Antoine Wright from Mobile Ministry Magazine, the YMCA, and God awful too many consulting gigs. Hope everybody's doing well today. I sure am. Sleepy.
And then also skipping over Brady because we're going to get to him a little bit more in a second, but LaRosa Johnson. LaRosa, how are you? The urban scholar himself.
Morning. Doing well. It's still early in Spokane, but I'm awake. I'm here. Got a new toy that I'm playing with.
What is that? Besides a watch?
Yeah, it's the Polar M400. It's a fitness watch with a GPS. So I decided to trade in my Pebble and start using this instead.
All right. You like it?
So far, it's been less than 24 hours, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's still got the shiny newness, so it's awesome right now. It'll be in 2 weeks when you hate it, right? Like every other piece of technology out there. Something like that. Speechless. Nothing to say. All right.
Like, what do you say to that? Yeah, I hate this thing.
How's it going?
No problem. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
I am. We're here in New Jersey. We missed the snow band that buried Buffalo by about 150 miles. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Wow.
And actually, I had the greatest time. Not this Monday, but the Monday before. My senior regional pastor and boss and friend took me up to New York, and we went through B&H Photo and put in a bunch of got a bunch of quotes to set up a video studio for the region office.
Cool.
And now I'm from Philly, so going to New York is like going to enemy territory. But I go to New York just to go and hang out at B&H Photo and then turn around and go home. And that would be a great day. You don't have to take me to a museum. You don't have to show me anything. Just go there and turn around and go home.
Well, I've been to New York twice and have never been to B&H Photo and feel quite like I've really missed out. So I would love to be in a bit of a what's the term for it?
Nerd.
Photographer and geek. I would love to do something like that. Well, let's get to our guest, Brady Shearer. Am I saying that right? From Pro Church Tools?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right. Brady, tell us about yourself and Pro Church Tools, and how'd you get into this thing and what's going on?
Sure thing, Kevin. First off, excited to be here on Theotek this morning. I am in the Eastern time zone, so it is 9 a.m., but I feel bad for the gentleman that's out there in Spokane. That's something else. Appreciate him getting up early to be with us.
Talk about dedication, right?
I'm the founder of ProChurchTools.com, and basically we focus on essential media training for every church. So basically we talk about elementary level content. Basically, that's what I kind of like to talk about. There's a lot of sites online that will teach you really complex stuff, and we like to focus on the basics. So if you've never focused on church media before, and church media really encompasses websites, social media, graphic design, and videography. So if you've never broached those topics before, we have a lot of introductory crash courses on that and teaching people how to do that kind of stuff. So that's what we do. I'm located here in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, and we're only about 30 minutes away from Buffalo, but something about the climate here, we don't ever get the snow that Buffalo gets. So they're buried over there, and we don't have that much snow at all.
Yeah, that lake effect has quite an impact on their region like that. So, well, I'm really excited that you've come to join us. A lot of times, the last couple of weeks, we've actually been very heavy on the Bible software side of Theotek. We talk about our focus is church and Bible technology, and so I'm glad that we've got you in to talk to us about media. I know Wes is really into the media side. He does some volunteer work with the American Baptist Convention, or whatever you call the church up there. Are you a convention or an association? I keep asking you this, Wes.
We are a region.
A region. Okay, the American Baptist denomination's regional organization in New Jersey, and of course I did my doctoral dissertation on using multimedia in preaching, but you know, at a small church like I'm at, we always, you know, our volunteers are people who, you know, just said yes, I'd be willing. One of the guys runs a computer support business, and so obviously he was a natural fit to help us out. And so, you know, we put a computer and a projector in our sanctuary and installed Media Shout on it, and then, you know, we said, here, figure this out, how to use this, and here's what I know about it, and that was sort of the limit of our training, and not so much because I wasn't willing to do it, because, you know, when you're a small church, these people are also the children's director and the, you know what I'm talking about. So, so I'm interested to, you know, hear some of your tips and ideas and things like that, and of what you do. And I came across them because don't you have a new book out about training and working with people like this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Church Graphics Handbook, and we kind of have this idea at Pro Church Tools that the best place to start is with graphics, with your church's graphics that you're creating. Because if you can improve your church's graphics, you can improve everything, meaning your videos, your church website, and the efforts that you're making on social media. And the Church Graphics Handbook was kind of the first paid product that we'd ever released on our site. We've been blogging, podcasting for about 18 months at prochurchtools.com. We have more than 150, you know, free pieces of content, but this was kind of the first paid product that we'd ever done. And I mean, the tagline for it is the non-designer's guide to creating beautiful church graphics. So we didn't make this for someone who's a professional, someone who's super competent with Photoshop, who's had design training or anything like that. It's for people that had never opened up any type of design software ever before. And the idea was, how can we get these individuals, people like you're mentioning, people that work in churches who are, you know, administrative assistants or associate pastors, or, you know, even just the lead pastor of a smaller church, and they're doing everything, people that have never opened Photoshop or design software before, how can we get those people to create beautiful graphics in the quickest way possible? So that was the goal that we attempted to accomplish with the Church Graphics Handbook.
Well, awesome. Why don't you jump in and give us, you know, one or two ideas of how we can do that kind of thing. You know, for example, you know, let's say I'm the pastor of a small church, which I am, and you know, I'm interested in knowing more about how to get some good media to illustrate my sermons. Just give us some quick ideas about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of why I think starting with graphics is one of the best things that you can do, because if you think about creating a video or, you know, relaunching a website or anything like that, it can kind of feel intimidating. But creating a graphic is super simple. And one of the best things that I could offer to your audience is to begin using really high-quality stock photos. I mean, it used to be not just a couple years ago, if you wanted a nice stock photo, you'd have to pay a significant sum of money to pick it up, whether it's at iStock Photo or on any of these sites that sell photos that you have to pay for. But recently, there have been a couple of sites that have jumped out of nowhere and kind of changed the whole stock photography industry. There's this one specific site, probably the most popular one. It's called unsplash.com, unsplash.com, and basically they release 10 new photos every single 10 days. Not every single week, 10 photos every 10 days, and these photos are absolutely free. And I mean, you got to visit the site because these photos are just absolutely stunning. They're beautiful, they're well put together. The stocks and the grading, how the photos look, is very high quality, very trendy. And again, these are completely free for whatever you want to do for them. And so if you're, you know, using clip art, or if you're using something like Keynote or something, you know, begin using these high quality photos because they're absolutely free. You can just download them straight to your computer. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to pay for anything, and you can immediately upgrade all the graphics you're creating just by this simple tip.
And Brady, one of the things that I suggest for people all the time is you can search on Flickr through Creative Commons, and you get a lot of folks who get some very decent pictures that you're allowed to edit and things like that. So it's the way to do it for free is really out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first started prochurchtools.com, every single image that we used for our blog posts was doing that exact same thing, searching Creative Commons on Flickr. So I'm very familiar with that, and I highly recommend that also.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I've got some technical difficulties on my end. I used to be able to do a screen share, but just before the podcast this morning, I discovered a problem. But so maybe if one of you guys know how to do that, you can show it. But yeah,
I'll set it up. Hold on.
Excellent high quality images that we're able to see here. How many of those? To me, though, they look real general. How many of that? How often do you think they put stuff up that would be church appealing to church and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of those things that I think is, I mean that's really arbitrary, I guess, depending on what you think would be, church. I mean, they're not posting people sitting in pews or people standing on stage speaking from pulpits, but I mean I've used these graphics for. I mean, we work with dozens of churches and we create graphics for them every single week. We create more than 1,000 graphics every single year, and I'm always going back to this kind of free database of stock photos, because one of the most things that what they release most is kind of like landscapes, so like fields and oceans and mountain ranges. I mean that's God's creation. If there's anything that you can use for church specific, it's something like that. With that being said, sometimes you need a super specific photo, and when we need something like that, our favorite site to use is dollarphotoclub.com, and I think they're in beta or they're a new site, so you have to kind of request to gain membership to the site. But once you do gain that access to membership, and for me it only took us about a week or so before we got our invite, so if you want to check it out, it's not that hard. dollarphotoclub.com, and basically each photo costs $1, and they have a great search function. Again, the photos aren't as pretty as this, but you can search for something specific, and there are plenty of beautiful photos in there. You just have to do a little bit of extra searching.
So and then if you need something extra specific too, one of the things I always like to remind people is you have cameras. Just spend some time and look at like the Unsplash or Flickr or something for good composition, and then go out and take your smartphone camera and take some pictures until you get one that you like, or reach out to your friends through social media to do it. So there's real good ways to get media like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big advocate of people sharing photos of their actual church, too. I mean, you could use only Unsplash, and there are plenty of sites like this. We list them all in the Church Graphics Handbook. But, I mean, you could go and get all these free photos, but then you're never going to have any photos of what it's like at your actual church. And so you want to have a nice representation of who you are actually. And like Wes mentioned, with the development of iPhone cameras, every time they come up with a new iPhone, the camera is always getting an improvement, it seems. So it used to be you'd have to get a DSLR or shoot an actual film, but now we have great cameras in every one of our pockets almost.
Yeah, and it's not just iPhone. I'm carrying a Galaxy Note, and recently one of my other gigs is, I do mobile tech blogging, and we did a test of the Note versus the iPhone 6 Plus and found the Note actually is somewhat superior as far as a camera goes. So if you've got an Android phone, if you've got a Windows phone, you definitely have a great camera if it's a recent Nokia phone. But so that's a great tip, Wes. I often forget about that. I love to take pictures, and yet I don't use my photography in my preaching very often. That's something I need to do a little bit more of. What then, do you just take these photos and just show them, as is, or you mentioned bringing it into design software? Well, then what are some of the things you do after that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you go to churchgraphicshandbook.com, you can kind of see examples of the type of graphics that we like to create. We kind of create what we like to call templates. So, I used to be the media director at my church, and my personal experience with creating graphics for our church was we were a small church, just a church plant up here in Canada, and I would, every single week I'd have the pastor, he needs some sermon graphics. I'd have, the young adult ministry, they need some like cool hipster graphics. I'd have the children's ministry, they need some graphics. And I couldn't really rely on like creative sparks kind of coming to me and creating these beautiful graphics all the time, because I don't really consider myself like an ultra creative person. And so what we began to do was we began to create a series of templates where basically we could open these templates, which we decided to build in Photoshop. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that. And so we would be able to open these templates, and an existing style of graphic would exist, and then we change the text, change the color perhaps, change the background photo, and we would have this new graphic in a matter of minutes, because we had a great quality template to begin with. And we started with one template, then we had 10 templates, and now we have hundreds and hundreds of templates that we use every single week to create graphics for our churches.
Yeah, we're just looking at the site on the screen right now. Do you have some examples of some of the things? Is that what we're looking at? Some links that show you examples of some of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see Wes's screen. There's just like 6 on the site in the copy there. There is a better link that we have. We have a post on Pro Church Tools. It's called 10 Beautiful Church Graphics for Your Inspiration. I can get that link. Is there a way to share it? That would have a much better representation of graphics that we create.
ProChurchTools.com/ and then
Yeah,
you just search.
Yeah, it's not like a super pretty link, unfortunately.
Do you have what's the title again?
10 beautiful church graphics for your inspiration. I have the link here. So, I mean, it's hard to it's unlikely to be able to type it in, I imagine.
But he's just doing a search on it. While he's doing that,
here we go.
Yeah, that's the one.
There you go. Go ahead and show. So these are actually pretty simple. What do you use to create these again?
We do everything in Photoshop. I mean, Photoshop is now only $10 per month, and so it's accessible to almost everyone. I mean, I would say 90% of churches and ministries. $10 a month, and that's a fully featured version of Photoshop. It's not Photoshop Elements or a trial version or something that's holding back on the features. It's fully loaded.
Yeah, and if you have an educator, like if you're, my wife's a school teacher, and so I get access to the full Creative Cloud suite for $20 a month. That's insane.
That's how I started too. I was in college. That's how I started also with that discount.
I could get the entire Creative Cloud for $20 a month because my wife is a teacher?
Yep. Yep, all you got to do is prove it, and it was as simple as I scanned a copy of her badge, her school ID, and sent it to him and filled out a form and said that she's a school teacher at it has to be an accepted school, one of the but almost every public elementary school, middle school, high school, college, private colleges, a lot of private schools are.
Yeah, I mean, I
know what I'm asking for Christmas now.
I attended a very obscure Bible college in Canada that had like 200 students, and they gave me access within like a day. So even if you attend or work at, like your wife was an odd school, I'm sure they'll give it to you. It was not hard at all to get access to that, and I'm used to educational discounts not being super easy. So.
Well, they're losing mind share, so they want to get in. Alternatives for that, if churches don't want to spend anything, you have the GIMP, which is a pain to use, but it's really, really powerful. If you're on Mac, Pixelmator is really good. The Acorn editor is really good. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there that can do this stuff. Brady, I don't know if you've ever seen on iOS, there's an app called Over. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have Over installed on my phone. I've definitely used it before when I'm sharing, Instagram posts. I haven't used it actually as much as I originally thought I would, but that's likely due to the fact that I'm not huge on Instagram, and most of the graphics we create are on our computer. But it is installed on my phone, and I have purchased some of the freemium upgrades on the app also.
Yeah, it's for people who want to do nice and simple. It takes care of the typography and all that stuff, and you can create something really beautiful really fast, and you don't have to know anything. That's always a plus.
Brady, what do you think of some of these subscription services? In the recent past, I talked about a thing I used called sharefaith.com. They just jacked their prices way up, so I canceled it. But what do you think of some of these subscription services that have canned church media? It's specific for church. Like they'll have, 2,000 countdowns, and 100 of them will be Thanksgiving, and 75 will be, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with those. We create video announcements for churches every single week, and one of our packages actually includes the Church Motion Graphics subscription package, and that's another Canadian Canadian friend of mine named Jeff McIntosh. He is the founder of ChurchMotionGraphics.com, MinistryPass.com, which is new. They do these graphic things, and I'm a big fan of both Igniter and Graceway. That was actually how I got into church media, creating graphics. when Graceway began offering the Photoshop, the PSD files, I would download those, and I would edit them and change them, and oh, this is how they layered everything together. Oh, this is how they created that effect. The one problem with the Graceway PSDs is normally they use paid fonts, and I always consider fonts to be kind of the main focus of a graphic. You can really change the whole look of a graphic by using either a great font or a poor font. I think that a graphic's success almost always would reside on the quality of a font. That's a personal opinion. But so I would download these Graceway PSDs, and everything would be there, all the layers, except then they would be using a font that, licensed for a couple $100. So we only use free fonts because paying for fonts is a big drag. I understand why Graceway does it, but that's one of the problems with their PSDs. But again, they still have beautiful graphics, and you can get customization credit. So if you aren't able to edit graphics yourself, they can do it for you.
So, like for Graceway, I've heard of it, but I don't use it. If you don't plan to edit, though, you don't have to pay for that font.
No. That's just if you wanted to change, because they have like pre-existing titles, and if you wanted to change the title to be something specific for you, no, you don't have to pay for the font. That's totally optional.
What do you think then is the best solution for somebody who they say, I'm not paying for a dime. Our board is, too tight. They're not going to paying for graphics for church. What a waste of money, And so, for somebody who's in a church like that, what would you give me some ideas of what they could do to still create beautiful graphics? You've already talked a little bit about that, but encapsulate that for us.
Yeah, definitely. One of the options is, like I mentioned, churchmotiongraphics.com. Now, they aren't free. It's $10 per month, and you get 15 motion backgrounds, brand new every month, and they come with a bunch of graphics also. And it's $10 per month. So, take 1, 2, 3 less cups of coffee that month, and you can pay for it yourself. I've heard of Jeff tell me about churches that come to him, they email him, say, hey, we can't afford $10 per month. And what those churches have done is they've had people in the church sponsor the graphics. So, someone in the church says, or even the media director themselves will say, hey, I'll pay $10 per month. But with that being said, if you actually have $0 per month, I mean, not everyone listening to this is probably from a North American church, and $10 USD can sometimes be a lot of money in a different country. So if you actually have, a $0 budget, we have several training articles on prochurchtools.com that will teach you how to create a graphic for free. And they use resources like unsplash.com and free color palettes online, free fonts, and then we show you how you can arrange everything. So you can be completely zero budget and do these things because there's so many free resources online and so many great design programs that are inexpensive or free also, like GIMP, for instance. So you could use unsplash.com for your photo. You could use Wisdom Script, for instance, is a free font that I really enjoy. And then you could use some color palettes from flatUIcolors.com, and you could use GIMP to edit it all. Mm-hmm. And you could create a graphic for 100% free. The problem is, it's not guaranteed to look good. You need to have some kind of design competence, even if that's fairly limited. But you could, in theory, do it for free and still create beautiful graphics.
And this part of me, Kevin, this is always my great struggle when we talk about using media in church. When you have a church that does not have anybody with any talent whatsoever for doing this, and then people go, well, we have to do this because big church down the street is doing this. I think in some respects we just are missing the point. There's other ways to differentiate ourselves without having to have the splashy graphics. And I'm a graphic guy, and I like that stuff. My church, their resource for this is largely me because that's what I do. But there's a lot of it's the akin to the church that says, well, we want to do a contemporary service because that's what the young people like. Great. What are you going to do? Well, we don't have anybody to do this, so we're going to do it and just to have canned music, and it flops, and they go, that didn't work. We got to really leverage the gifts that we have.
Yeah, Wes, I think that's a great point. I think that we need to, understand all of this is with the caveat, bad graphics are worse than no graphics.
No graphics.
Understand that. Let's pull in, Wes and I have been sort of dominating this. La Rosa, Antoine, either of you have something you want to ask Brady about? I guess not. You guys listening?
I can't. I don't have anything on my end. Well, no, and I guess the reason half of that is, like Wes, I've always been the guy to make the graphics, and when you're always the guy that makes the graphics, you kind of already farm out what you guys have made into an excellent solution for a lot of churches. I end up recommending, Church Pro Tools and other sites for folks to go to keep from being the support guy, which is always fun when you're the one that's always asked to do a graphic to budget-restrained ministries.
Yeah.
What though, what do you see, because there's one step in always offering a service. Here are some graphics that are really excellent. Here are some tools that are excellent. Are you guys also doing things like webinars or webcasts or hangouts even, where churches can learn techniques of how not to do ugly graphics and how to implement best practices? Because the marketing world is full of what works and what doesn't work, and it's our advantage in the church to take advantage of those things, no matter what our budget is.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure this completely answers your question, but we have a weekly podcast, much like this one. It happens on Tuesdays every week, the Pro Church Podcast, and we talk a lot. That's kind of, we write a lot of blog posts, but there's only so deep that you can dive into with a blog post. But with the podcast, it's much more discussion in nature, and so we run anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, and we talk all about, we're going to take a single topic and we're going to dive really deep into it. And much like Theotek, we have expert interviews on that. We invite people on. And we definitely talk about. I have been known to talk more about what not to do rather than what to do, because, like I said, we talk about essential media training, and a lot of that has to do with, anytime you're learning a skill. I think about, learning a skill like cooking or, taking up a new sport like basketball. You got to learn what's wrong and what you're doing poorly before sometimes you can learn what the correct technique is. Because a lot of times we bring in these bad natural tendencies that are just not helpful for what we're creating.
And what's that?
Basketball was a new sport?
Oh, no, I was just saying if you were learning a new skill. I'm thinking of when I was a kid learning basketball, and I was thinking about specific things that probably don't relate because they're like, unique basketball techniques that wouldn't be very helpful for people. So, bad illustration on my part.
I was just wondering if you're thinking compared to hockey, where it's a little.
That's funny. I'm a bad Canadian. I grew up. Everyone in my school and city played hockey, and I was like, I'm not into hockey. I'm into basketball. I grew up playing.
Really?
With all the NBA players, actually. Like I played with Andrew Wiggins as a kid, and with Tristan Thompson and Kelly Olynyk. We played together, and they all got tall, and I stayed short and white, and it didn't work out for me. But that's okay. I do this now, so I'm happy.
He just pulled 5 degrees of separation with the NBA. That's pretty good.
Yeah, until high school, and then, I stayed 5'8".
But now here's the big question. Did you go curling?
We did have a curling gym class once, so it was an elective. So for a week, we got to go curling. Curling's actually, and this is going to sound really Canadian, I really enjoyed it. I only did it for a week during gym class in the 11th grade, but I enjoyed it.
I watch it on the Olympics when it's on. What's the name of your podcast again, so we can give you a plug?
Yeah, it's the Pro Church Podcast.
Pro Church Podcast. Do you find that? How do you get that?
Sorry, what do you mean?
I mean, where can I find it? Just
yes. If you just go to prochurchtools.com, we post all the sessions there, and there's links in every session where you can subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher. If you just search my name in whatever podcast platform you use, whether it is iTunes, Stitcher, or something else, just search Brady Shearer, and the podcast will come up.
Cool. All right. And LaRosa, do you have something?
No, I really don't have any questions. I'm much like Antoine in the respect that I'm usually the guy that gets asked to do a lot of the graphic stuff, and sites like this are the ones that I end up recommending because I don't want to be the one to do it myself all the time. So I'm really grateful for sites like this.
Speaking from the pastor's perspective, Brady, I know of a lot of my fellow pastors, they hear me talk about using multimedia in their preaching. I think it's a great tool when used well. Let's say you've got a pastor who's, they're just totally uninterested in that, but you've got a church member who's discovered you and really thinks this is something they can do. Do you have any tips or ideas about how to get the church leadership on board with implementing this maybe there is someone in our church that's, maybe they're a graphic designer by trade. That's their living, and they're willing to give away. They normally charge people hundreds or thousands of dollars for their work, but they're willing to give it away. But the pastor is saying, we don't need that. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, keep in mind that my response is going to come from a 23-year-old who is a millennial, and so it's going to be very filtered and biased through that perspective. But I mean, the way I see it, when I grew up in church, preaching didn't really hit me very well. Just like teaching in school, I have a very difficult time sitting for 90 minutes in school or 30 to 60 minutes in church just listening and being talked at. And I mean, Bible calls us to preach the gospel. But in my mind, I mean, when I think of preaching, I don't necessarily think of standing on a pulpit for 30, 40 minutes talking at people. And I think that we're called to communicate the gospel in ways that culture can understand and relate to. And so, I mean, if you have a pastor that, he says, I'm going to preach, or she says, I'm going to preach every Sunday, and that's how we're going to communicate the gospel, in my mind, in my opinion, that's a very limited and restricted view of what we're called to do. I mean, we're finally kind of seeing the education industry come around to this. I was on a shoot last year, and we went to a school that was kind of changing the game for how they were teaching kids week in and week out. They wouldn't have just simple 90-minute classes where they talk to these high school students, but they'd have classes that were called like free classes, and they'd break out, and you'd have teachers that you could speak to one-on-one, and instead of having a class break and science, math, gym, English, one of those classes would be a free class, and you'd have teachers that you could speak to one-on-one, because they were kind of realizing, hey, kids aren't learning the same as they used to. We can't just talk at kids for 90 minutes and expect them to learn and pick this stuff up. It needs to be experiential. And so I think it's important to communicate the gospel in ways that our culture can understand and relate to. With that being said, if you have a church that's everyone is 50 plus, maybe diving into graphic design and videography and social media, that may not be the best option for your church. But I'm thinking for the majority of churches that want to, bring my generation into the church and essentially survive long term, because they need to have people coming in and churches that have a wide demographic of generations. If that's what they want, this is something I think is essential and necessary. I mean, you don't have to do all of it. You don't have to go super deep, but we need to be communicating in ways, like I said, that the culture can relate to. So if someone's offering their services, like you mentioned, Kevin, that's awesome, because you're going to have to either spend your time, your money, or you're going to have existing expertise. And it sounds like a lot of you guys have existing expertise, but for people who don't have that, you're going to either have to spend the time to learn about it and gain expertise, or you're going to have to spend the money and outsource it. I don't think it's an acceptable option to just say we're not going to do that. And again, that's my personal opinion, and I think it would be probably shared throughout the majority of people my age, but I'm just a young guy, so take it with a grain of salt.
Brady, one of the things
that I want to share, the senior adult crowd, believe it or not, there'll be a few who will just say, we never did that way before. For those folks, I kind of, all right, whatever. But I don't want to be dismissive of them, but there are a number of them that will accept it. And one of the arguments in favor of using it for that group is their hearing's going. And so when I put my Bible scripture up there, and they can read it in the translation I'm reading it in, even if they don't hear it, they enjoy that because they can read it, and they don't have to rely totally on their hearing. Plus, I'll put pictures up, and they get the picture when they don't fully hear everything I'm saying correctly. And so I've actually had senior adult crowds come up to me when I first introduced this at my previous church, and then when we introduced it here, and they say to me, I really like that you put, your main sermon points. Now, I don't put full outlines. I just do phrases. If I've got a whole sentence, I'll pick 3 or 4 words out of that sentence to throw up on the screen. But they sort of see it. And then the third thing is Jesus was a multimedia preacher. That's what parables are all about. And you can go all the way through the Bible. God communicated the boundary of sin to Adam and Eve using multimedia. That's what, for him it was an object lesson of the fruit of the tree in the center of the garden. The Bible is filled with imagery, and so it's actually a very biblical concept of using multimedia. God created us. He knows that we're multisensory communicators. And then here's another low-tech way of doing it, and that is object lessons. we think that's for the children's sermon. But I've found some of the most powerful communication tools is when I bring a prop into the pulpit and use that. And so I know that's not really what you're all about, Brady, but I bet you talk about that as well with people, because I bet that you know that that's just as powerful sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember a handful of messages from when I was in youth group, when the speaker would bring out, and he's like talking about breaking free from sin, and he's got some chains, or a specific one at a youth retreat where we did where you stomp on a box, and that's symbolic of stomping away Satan, and some of that is cheesy from the 2000s and that kind of era of ministry, but at the same time for a 14, 15, 16-year-old, it was super effective, because again, I didn't learn very well when preachers would just talk at me, but when they got me involved and like you mentioned with an object lesson like that really communicated well, and I still remember that message now 10 years later, and I don't remember many others.
And Kev, I've said this before, but this is where liturgical churches have low churches beat in spades.
Yep.
Because in a liturgical church, the entire service is motion. You're moving through a story, you're progressing through something, you're going through. And I know low church folks like to complain about having to shift through books and up and sitting up and sitting, and they're standing up and sitting down and then kneeling and getting up again. But man, for someone like me, or for I'm thinking even a Brady who for sitting, listening to someone talk at you, which is something I talk about constantly for 30, 40 minutes, that's a nightmare scenario. I need something tactical to go through. All the senses have to be involved. And so I think in a lot of respects, Brady, even what you're doing or what a lot of us are doing, since we're a bunch of graphical folks here, is we're really catching up to where our brothers and sisters in Christ were centuries ago, where we lost something, and we need to really recapture this idea of worship and communicating the gospel being really a whole self concept. And so for that, Brady, I have to thank you.
Speak for yourself about losing that. I was just at a good liturgical service on Sunday.
What denomination was it, though?
Well, aren't you special?
I visited a good Presbyterian church who
there you go.
one of the few in Charlotte that have not lost. Yeah, it's really good. But I agree with you, Wes. Having motion, or at least multi-sensorial interaction inside of the worship community experience, that's always going to be more valuable. And I think, and it's a generational thing, and it's not just a current generation, but every next generation thinks the previous generation was too stoic and too staid. And so all that we're seeing now is, we're seeing, newer approaches in this generation towards visual and audio interactions that we just, we might not have seen before, or we might not have seen in this manner before in some parts of our culture. Whereas other parts, my friends who are Roman Catholic, they just look at me with a blank face, because they truly continue to do the same things all the time, and there's always interaction. They don't need, PowerPoint. They got Stations of the Cross. It works. Mm-hmm. And so, as we understand the place of media, the right place of media, and have, options like a Pro Tools or, other types of trainings available, I think we're going to see, liturgy and not just church, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take the next step, Brady. Let's say they've gotten on board and they've begun to work with they've begun to work and getting the graphics going. Now you've got someone who wants to get those next level skills in place. What are your suggestions there?
One of my favorite types of media, probably my absolute favorite type, is video. That's how I got my start. And video, I think, is a very helpful tool to be used in your services, and not just your services. I mean, I don't think a church stops on Sundays, and so I think having a website, having social media presence, and sharing on that is great. I love using video for sharing people's testimonies and sharing the stories of individuals within our church. I mean, we can all come together on Saturday night, come together on Sunday morning, and we know a lot about the pastor and his family, maybe some of the other pastors, but we don't always know too much about one another unless we're in life groups. And I think sharing the stories of real people is so edifying to the church, and sharing the struggles, sharing the victories, sharing the boring moments, sharing it all. And I love using video to kind of communicate that message, because unless you're a pastor and familiar with speaking on stage, getting in front of those lights in front of everyone, it can be very intimidating. And so you can share someone's testimony through video in a way that's a lot less intimidating for that specific individual. I mean, sitting down in front of a camera and lights is obviously, I think, actually sometimes harder than standing on stage, but you can kind of talk through that person, talk for 20 minutes, and then just cut out the best parts and then communicate and edit a story out of it. And so once you have your graphics down, I think taking the step to video is a great step. Having a beautiful website is also very important, and it's so easy to do so now with so many great services like Squarespace and WordPress. So yeah, does that kind of answer your question, Kevin?
That's exactly what I was thinking about, was that intermediate to next level, to take a church to the next level, to make it, because pictures on the back of a screen, that's still two-dimensional, but while video is two-dimensional, when you show it on a screen, it feels more three-dimensional. And let me just give an example of that. We just had a guest speaker at our church, and he's a church planter up on Long Island, and they do a video testimony for every baptism. And in this past year, it's a small church, but they've had 16 people baptized. And so one of the videos he brought with him when he showed it to us was every single baptism for the past year. They clipped it together with some beautiful music, and then had interspersed in that a couple of the more dramatic testimonies. And I'm telling you, that was a very powerful presentation for our church, which, we're sort of we're trying to do our best to maintain in this culture and community where we live, where the population's deteriorating. It's getting smaller. Next year, there'll be fewer people in our neighborhood than there were this year, and so it's really difficult to grow. And so when we see something like that, it's really inspirational. And so I think that's right. When you talk about using video, do you think it's better to use stock video, or is it better to use music videos, or give me what do you mean by using video? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, I think a great place to start is just focusing on people, and that would be, obviously doing your own video. We have no shortage of video training on prochurchtools.com. We actually have a 40-part series of video training that will take you from knowing nothing to creating videos that don't suck, at least. In fact, I got an email from a reader just last week, and he said, "Hey man, I emailed you last year. I went through your church video series, which is what we call this free 40-part series of training. And actually, if you go to prochurchtools.com and sign up for our newsletter, we'll send you that training right away automatically. So that's a really easy way to get it." But he was telling me he went through it. He created this music video of someone in his church. I think it was actually his fiance singing a worship song. He put it on YouTube, and he's since been going through that series and honing his skills. And now he was offered actually the media director job or communications director job at a church. And he started all with that series of training. So hopefully that means the training can help people create videos. But I'm a huge advocate of shooting video yourself of your own church. The camera industry is ultra competitive right now. Every new camera comes out has to have a new feature and better than the last. And so we're seeing cameras, the price point has dropped significantly in the last couple of years. The entry point into videography is the lowest it's ever been. And so you can jump on in, buy a camera and lights, lens, and your editing software for less than $500, less than $1,000. And again, we have options and recommendations for all this gear on prochurchtools.com. You can search through the archives of all our posts. There's tons of that stuff. And then one of the things that I love to do is create vision videos. So maybe once every year you do this big video where you capture your church and you say, this is where we've been, this is where we're going. We love to do video announcements. Not every church is meant to do video announcements, I don't think, but we absolutely love condensing that portion of the service into video. I grew up in a church where announcements would drag on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes longer than the message or worship, and no one wants that. And so condensing those into video is a great way of using that type of media in your service also.
Yeah, one of the great sources that we've used for video relating to the video announcements thing is if there's a certain emphasis, a missions emphasis or something like that, there's almost likely going to be video that'll go along with that. I'm a Southern Baptist pastor, and so our North American Mission Board, our International Mission Board, our state missions organization always produces video related to that. And so, we'll get missionary testimonies and, here's what your offering goes to, that kind of thing. And then we're also participating in Samaritan's Purse shoe boxes, and this is just this last Sunday, instead of having an organ, offertory, we had Scotty McCreery talking about how to pack a shoebox, because we got that from Samaritan's Purse. And so even if you can't produce it yourself, there's a huge supply of stuff, and that'll make the announcement time a whole lot more interesting, because I hate giving announcements. But you're a pastor, you probably feel the same way.
Well, yeah, and I know the historical reality of why we have announcements, so we kind of missed it. Hey, Kev, one of the things that I use video for, and I haven't done it for a series in a while, and I need to start again, is I'll do it when I have a sermon series come up. I'll do an introduction, and I pulled one up on YouTube that was done back during, it was right around the 2008 presidential election, and I was doing a thing called Kingdom Collision, talking about the political implications of Jesus preaching, which is not what most people think. And so I did a spoof attack ad, which was fun. So I'll see if it plays.
You going to share your screen and show that?
It's not. No, hold on a second. Let me share my screen.
The Google Hangouts thing, it only lets you do it locally on each person. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's a little weird. All right, let's try this now. Let's go back to the beginning. It's only.
Well, while he's getting that going, let us know when you get that ready, Wes.
I'm up. Are you? Is it showing the screen?
Anybody else seeing it? I'm having really terrible bandwidth problems here, probably because of this technical issue I'm dealing with.
I'm not seeing it, and my bandwidth doesn't seem to be letting me. I've been going in and out of video.
You guys keep talking, and I'll figure this out. Sorry.
Okay, I was going to ask you about sound and video. That's a big issue. A lot of these cameras do shoot great videos, but their sound is terrible. How do you solve that problem, Brady?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Kevin. I always say that bad sound is much worse than bad video. You can kind of compensate if you have a poor or not the greatest video camera if you have high quality sound, but it doesn't work the other way around. And so I always recommend that you record your audio separately. And again, plenty of resources on prochurchtools.com that will teach you how to do that. Currently, we're using a Rode NTG2. It's a shotgun mic, which means that it has, a capturing field of view that doesn't capture everything. It kind of captures just what's in front of it, and so it can kind of omit all the sounds around it, which is great. We use that in our video studio for video announcements, and then we record into a Tascam DR60D, which is an audio recording interface. And one of the hugely popular ones that we used to use was the Zoom H4n, and basically this captures audio specifically, and then what we do is we combine the video and the audio in post-production, which is super easy if you're using Final Cut, if you're using Adobe Premiere Pro. They have automatic features where you can just kind of select two clips and then click the merge button, and it'll automatically connect the video with the audio. I remember back in the day I'd have to line it up inside of my interface, which was tremendously annoying, but now it can be done automatically. So, yeah, we always record audio separately because, like I mentioned, you need high quality audio. You can have the most beautiful video. Imagine seeing, a movie in the theaters, beautiful film done by professionals, and then having like that echoey, reverby, nasty audio. It'd make the film pretty much useless. But at the same time, you can have like a smartphone, an old smartphone just recorded, video that doesn't even look very good. Even for these, like, the webcams we're using aren't amazing, especially when we broadcast them live and we lose a lot of the beauty with the bandwidth. But we all have pretty good sounding audio, which makes this Hangout work. If it was the other way around, it would not be fun to listen to.
Yeah, I'm reviewing something from, I think it's called IK Media. It's an iRig mic that plugs into your iPhone, and it actually has really good quality sound, and so you could have that below the person's head right out of the shot, and get the audio. Do that on the cheap, or some of these more expensive. Are the tools you were talking about? How much are those? Just give us a ballpark.
Yeah, one of the mics that we recommend on ProChurchTools.com, it's a shotgun mic. It's less than $100. I mean, it's like $99. But yeah, those audio interfaces, I think the Zoom you can pick up for $200, $250, and that Tascam's like $300, $350. So they are a bit more expensive. But again, if you're going to invest in something when it comes to video, audio is the first thing that you should be investing in.
And you can always get a mic for your iPhone and plug it in through that. So you have your recorder separate from the camera.
Yeah, there's stuff for everybody on all different levels, right? I mean, there's stuff on the cheap that's okay, and then there's the higher end. Would you agree with that statement, Brady?
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever your budget point is, there's no shortage of equipment that you can pick up.
Well, listen, we're coming up on an hour here, and it looks like Google is, just really chugging away trying to keep up with us. We just got too much hot air and talk going on here, but so I think we're going to have to call it quits here in a minute. Any final tip that you want to share with us? Any final thing that you think is important for us to remember?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my biggest thing that I've been talking about lately is I'm all about getting big results and doing the most minimal amount of work necessary. Especially, we come from churches. We don't always have the most money, time, or volunteer resources needed. And so I think if you can just focus on your church's graphics, you can upgrade every type of media that you're currently producing. I mean, you can share these beautiful graphics on social media, which is proven to boost and accelerate your social media results in a huge way. You can use those graphics in your videos. So I've recorded videos where I just have a talking head, which is kind of boring, but if you can intersperse graphics, it can make that video so much more dynamic. And we did a test where all we did was take a church's website and we just replaced the graphics on the site, and it was like launching a brand new website, and it was, again, simple. So if you can upgrade your church's graphics, if you can focus on that, you can get huge results just from that simple change. And that's why we built the Church Graphics Handbook. Hopefully it can teach people how to create beautiful graphics who have never had any experience in that before.
How can we get a hold of that?
Yeah, you can just go to churchgraphicshandbook.com, and there's 3 different packages we have. So again, we like to offer something that every church can gain access to. So you might not have enough to get the complete package, which is obviously the most valuable. It comes with more than 400 actually ready-to-go templates. So you can just open them, change the text, and create a graphic in 30 seconds. We actually have a test on the page, churchgraphicshandbook.com, where I create a new graphic in less than 30 seconds because we want to make it that easy. But hey, maybe you can't afford that and you just got to get the book itself, which will just teach you how to do it on your own. So 3 different packages. You can find the best option for your church.
Brady, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. We've been talking to Brady Shearer from Pro Church Tools, and also the writer of Church Graphics Handbook, as well as, sounds like curator is maybe a better term for that, since there's more than just a book involved there. But we really appreciate you being with us, man, and thanks for all the ways that you're trying to serve the church in this way. I think it's an important area that we need. Guys, we've had a great hour together.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Everybody still awake? maybe we need to. The video's not keeping up. You can't see me poking you with the pointer at the camera very well there, but. Anyway, so I think we're going to call it quits today. This has been the Theotek podcast. We hope that you who are watching this on YouTube, that you'll go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you'll get notice every single time we post one of these on YouTube. If you want to watch us live, we're at 9 o'clock on Friday mornings through, just follow me on Google Hangouts, Kevin Purcell, plus Kevin Purcell for Google Plus, and you'll find it that way. And if you want to go over to theotek.com, our in-progress website, Brady, don't you go over there. You'll embarrass me because I'm sort of the webmaster over there. It doesn't look too good right now, but anyway, we're getting there. But that's where you can find links to our iTunes and Stitcher Radio for the audio version of this. We'll have that up usually by sometime in the beginning of the week. As I say, I'm a pastor and tech blogger and now a podcaster, and so we, sometimes don't always get it on Monday morning like I try to do. But we'll get that up usually Tuesdays at the latest. But thanks for being with us. See you guys.
Peace out, guys.
See ya.